2024 election were held today, Donald Trump would win. According to a new survey from DataStack Strategy, Trump would beat Joe Biden in the Electoral College by 292 votes to 246 if a presidential election were held today. Biden is still on course to win the popular vote by 49% to 48%. In the wake of several recent bad polls for Biden, his team, along with other Democrats, are scrambling. The New York Times Siena College survey and Emerson College poll show Biden is effectively tied with former president and GOP frontrunner Donald Trump with 30 versus 29%. According to Emerson, 45% of voters 29 and younger said they support Trump, compared with 43% who are backing Biden.
White House ex-press secretary for Biden, Jen Psaki, tore into Trump Sunday in her MSNBC show, maintaining that if he's reelected, it would, quote, unravel the rule of law as we know it. Let's watch.
The hand-wringing and cocktail party speculation about an alternative to Joe Biden is continuing, will continue. Guess what? Joe Biden isn't perfect. No candidate is, by the way. But we have to understand what the alternative is here. If elected to a second term, Donald Trump would prosecute anyone he deems an enemy, unleash troops on protesters, and essentially unravel the rule of law as we know it.
Here to break down the concerns that might be unfolding is Michael LaRosa, former press secretary for First Lady Jill Biden. Welcome back, Michael.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I mean, I guess I have to first respond to Jen Psaki there saying, you know, if Trump gets back in office, perceived political enemies will be prosecuted, protesters will be being prosecuted. Of course, Trump is right now the person being prosecuted, as were many of the protesters on January 6th and all of that. Are we in a position where the federal government is being weaponized against politically active people on both sides of the political spectrum?
I don't know. I mean, the president's son is being weaponized against him. The former president isn't really, I mean, the former president has been indicted, I think, by grand juries in multiple jurisdictions across the country. So, and I'm not sure it's related to politics. I think grand juries are made up of 10, 12, sometimes 20 people. So there's clearly evidence that the guy broke the law, but I don't know if that has anything to do with the weaponization of government. It looks like, I think what Jen is saying is that Trump will try to weaponize the government for political means if he's elected. He tried to do that a little bit before, but, you know, institutions held, and I'm a firm believer that we survived him the last time, and I think our institutions will hold should he win the presidency again, which I don't think he will.
Well, Michael, let me ask you about something else that Jen Psaki said there. She alluded to a kind of frustration with the idea that there are these other candidates in the race, Dean Phillips, Marianne Williamson, RFK Jr., Cornel West, and on, seeming to suggest that they shouldn't be, that there shouldn't be a Democratic primary, echoing sentiments from the Democratic Party that there shouldn't be a primary, that there shouldn't be debates, that everyone should rally around Joe Biden, especially because the poll numbers are close between he and President Trump. But isn't there a counter argument to that, which says because the polling is so close between Biden and Trump, we should have an opportunity for Americans to get to know other candidates and make sure that they can pick one that is most likely to beat Trump, especially in light of polls that show a generic Democrat does better against Donald Trump than Biden does?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it's unusual for presidents to run for re-election, incumbent presidents. I think it's very normal. I also think when you're a successful first-term president, it's even more likely and normal. No one runs for president for 4 years. They run for 8. That was the deal the Democratic Party made. They had, look, the Democrats had plenty of options in 2020, plenty, from all different ideological spectrums. They chose Joe Biden pretty overwhelmingly. And look, that election was close too. President Biden won by about 40,000 votes in about 3 or 4 states. I don't know why we expect a different kind of race this time. I think it's going to be close, but I don't think anybody ever suggested it wasn't going to be close, no matter who it is. And you know what? A lot of the folks that people would like to see run as an alternative to Biden chose not to, simply because he's been so successful. If he wasn't in a strong position, there's no doubt in my mind that somebody would have challenged him, somebody credible like the governor of California.
Well, let me
But
ask
it's
you-
really hard to argue with the president's record. Really hard.
Is it that they weren't chosen, that they decided not to run because they believed so strongly in Joe Biden, or could it be the following situation? Remember back in 2016, Biden was pressured by Democratic Party members, including Barack Obama, not to run, to allow Hillary Clinton to run. And we all know what happened in that election. Hillary Clinton only was polled above, outside of the standard deviation of error, above Donald Trump for, I believe, the week or so after the Access Hollywood scandal. The whole rest of the race, she was neck and neck with him in a way that many people felt like was disturbing. Here she is, a former vice president, a first lady, a former senator, someone with name recognition and a lot of credentials, who couldn't even poll more than a few points above Donald Trump. Meanwhile, you had someone like Bernie Sanders, who polls consistently showed was polling 10 points higher than Donald Trump that entire election season. But the mainstream media said that Hillary was more electable, and then we got Donald Trump as president in 2016. Are you concerned that similarly, more able, candidates that are more able to beat Trump are being pressured out of this race right now by the Democratic Party?
No, I don't. I think the problem is that it's really hard to challenge a president who was able to accomplish so much, accomplished more things since Lyndon Johnson in his first term. You might disagree with a lot of those things, but you cannot say he hasn't been effective and that he hasn't been successful. The other thing I would say, look, it was a close race in 16. It was a close race in 2020. I would look at the county of Miami-Dade in Florida. I think Hillary Clinton beat Trump by 12 points, and President Biden won by like 2 points. That has a lot to do with the Bernie Sanders brand of the Democratic Party and Cuban Americans down there who really have transitioned from supporting Barack Obama and other Democrats to really turning on the Democratic Party. So I wouldn't necessarily think Bernie Sanders or somebody from that wing of the Democratic Party is their winning solution.
One quick
Democrats
question
should
before
not be
we
losing
let you go.
Miami-Dade County.
Is there a unique situation, though, with Biden? You say, well, of course, it's going to be an 8-year situation. The president's run for re-election, et cetera. But Joe Biden, even at the start of his first term, older than any other person in that office, way older, still older than Trump, older than anyone else on that list. Now is him running for re-election a different scenario for him, and then given the polls, and what clearly part of that is voters saying they think right now that he's too old to be president and can imagine another 4 years of him. That is specific to Joe Biden and the situation we're in.
Sure. It was the same thing Democrats tried to make an argument out of in 1984. It's kind of a movie we've seen before. That's why I was a little surprised by Peggy's column in the Wall Street Journal, because she went through the same thing with her boss. At the time, it was the oldest president, and the same kinds of editorials and concerns in polling were taking place at the time among the American voters. So it doesn't really concern me. I also think he might be the oldest president in history, but he's also been the most successful first-term president in history we've ever had.
I do think that just saying that he's the most successful first-term president, when so many Americans obviously feel very differently about that, is not necessarily a winning message. The majority of Democrats do not want Joe Biden to be the nominee. The party is pressing on without him. Joe Biden, it's worth noting, did signal that he might only stay in office for one term at the beginning of his 2019 race, seeming to understand that some people might be willing to bet on him on the short term, but not the long term. And I really...
He was a bridge. He said he'd be a bridge to another generation and to a new generation of leadership. He didn't say the bridge was in 4 years. Well, I think he meant the bridge was after he was done being president.
Okay, well, he can say now what he meant then, but most people interpreted his remarks at the time, and there was a lot of reporting on it, that he might only be a one-term candidate, which set people's fears about his age to the side. And now we're seeing that he's going to have to live with polling and public opinion, which reflects a lot of negativity around the idea that he is continuing forward at this unprecedented age, not just at this age, but with what some people are perceiving as a cognitive or physical decline from what they saw 4 years ago or back when he was vice president of the United States. So what do you say directly to Democratic voters who have that concern, who do not feel like he's been the most successful president in their lifetimes, much less in the history of the country, who feel like he reneged on a number of promises, including student debt cancellation, getting into this war in Israel-Palestine, which has tanked his numbers among Arab Americans in the key state of Michigan. He's flailing with younger voters who also have more solidarity with Palestine, this Palestinian liberation movement, et cetera. What do you say to them, who are the ones that have to be convinced to actually vote and who are not going to easily fall for platitudes like, trust us, he's the best that we've ever had?
I would say that he's the first president to ever try to cancel student debt, and he came pretty damn close to it. I would say that it is nothing new in American foreign policy that we are a loyal ally to the state of Israel. That's also not new. I would also say to young voters, they have a choice to make. Do they want to vote for a candidate who has no problem with military-style assault weapons on the street or in schools, or do they want to vote for the candidate who actually wants to take them away? Or do they want to vote for the candidate who took their right to an abortion away? Or do they want to vote for the candidate who wants to codify it? That's up to them. That's their choice. It is a choice, though, and they have to make that choice. And I think once we get through, when the Republicans have their nominee, I think everything will kind of congeal the way it always does, and everybody will go to their tribal partisan corners because everybody will want to back their team, and everybody will get on the team, and it will come down to a choice between two people. And you know what? Despite what the polls are fun, and they're great fun to talk about and take up a lot of time on cable news, but they are not predictive of outcomes. Actually, I would say the evidence we have right now, according to 2018, 2020, 2022, is that the voting behavior and the voting trends of the electorate give Joe Biden the edge. Independents in all three elections, whenever Donald Trump or Joe Biden or their two parties are on the ballot, Joe Biden and his party have won. That's pretty good news to me. And polling really does not predict outcomes of elections. We were ahead by 9 points in Ohio. I remember that.
Michael LaRosa, thank you so much for joining us to make your case. We always appreciate it.
You're welcome.